Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm on mute. How are you?
Hello. Hi. Hi. My name is Chiazam. I'm going to be the host. So I'm just letting y'all in first because you are the presenters.
Awesome.
We're waiting for one more person. Let's see. Okay, Steve. Steve is here. And okay. Hi. So all of you are the presenters. That's everyone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So is there anything you need me to do before we start?
We need to share our screen. Do I have permission to do that?
I'm going to make each of you co-hosts right now. We can test that feature out right now. Okay, do you want to try sharing your screen? Okay.
All right. Looks good.
I'll monitor the chat in case anyone writes any questions. If I need to mute anyone, I can also do that. And I'll start letting people in about 11 minutes.
Awesome.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Thank you.
No problem.
Should I keep the screen shared? Brittany, yours, your presentation earlier was awesome.
Oh, good. Thank you.
It laid really well. I don't know if it's just how I had my Zoom set up, but I think you had your screen shared the whole time, or someone did.
Yeah, Hillen did. He had to share his screen shared the whole time, which worked out really nicely. And I don't know if you, so as a presenter, what I did was I just moved, there's like a little bar where like all stacked. There's like a little bar next to it. I just smushed it over so I could see everyone who had their camera on. A lot of people just choose not to have their camera on. I've noticed that the past couple days, as opposed to me, who I'm like, I feel like I have to be in my position. But so I don't know. I mean, if we want to encourage like discussion, that was like a little less discussion based and kind of more us just sharing our stories. Whereas I think some of this presentation is a little bit more, could be geared towards a discussion.
Yeah.
It's up to you. I was in one yesterday that didn't even have a presentation. They just were straight like people's screens, and it was nice. But again, like there were a lot of people with cameras on, and like I had to pop in and pop out really quick because I was doing counts of the other sessions. So.
Becca, are you planning on operating the PowerPoint the whole time?
Yep, I can do that.
I'm fine with that. Probably easier to have.
I should not be.
Feel free to give me a friendly reminder if it's time for me to go to the next slide. I may have a history with forgetting to, once you finish your part of the presentation, you're just like, oh wait, I have to actually click for people.
Yeah, or I get so invested in like what other people are saying. I'm like, oh wait, it's my turn.
Yep. I actually wrote in my transition from, I literally wrote, turn it over to Stephen. So I say, I'm going to turn it over to Stephen.
I am going to forget for sure, I think. Like I will just be awkward whenever I'm done, so. Whoever's after me.
That's a good reminder. I'm going to write that, turn it over to Brittany to remind me to do that.
Wait, am I the last one?
No, you talk second.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so it's Becca, then you, then me, then Brittany, I believe.
Yep. Oh yeah, I wrote that down too.
There's one person in the waiting room, so that's exciting.
Good sign.
We've got a live one, guys.
There's a lot of sessions offered this hour, so we'll see.
Yeah, we've had 8 at each time slot.
Nick. Oh, okay. Got it. And I think a lot of people tend to join in like 5 minutes or so after.
Mm-hmm.
I know I do. Like, I'll have it in my mind, like, oh, there's a session at 10. And then I'll start doing something else and I'll be like, oh, it's 10:05, time to start.
I don't know about you guys. Today has been like, this week has been like an atomic bomb.
I know.
Ugh.
But hey, you look nice and tan after your Florida
Oh,
vacation.
thank you.
Yeah. How was the
Only,
drive?
only burnt on my stomach, so you can't see that, which is good. The face didn't get burnt. I did get bit by a mosquito, and I itched it so bad that I now put the Band-Aid over it because I keep scratching at it, and I'm like, I'm gonna ruin my face. So.
Oh, I didn't even notice it. You
Yeah,
can't
I
even
didn't notice
tell.
it till you mentioned
Oh,
it.
that's good. Trying to think. It looks worse with the Band-Aid off because I've just like scratched it to the point where it's just red and awful. I don't know who gets bit on their face by bugs, but apparently me. I got bit everywhere in Florida, like on my feet. I got bit in my armpit at one point. I was like, how is that even, whatever.
I just invested. My husband was about to kill me. I bought 3 of them. These like bug sucker things.
I heard about that.
You
they
should
work?
get them. They really work. Yeah. So you literally on Amazon, Google bug sucker thing, and it comes up. But it's like this little, like it almost looks like a syringe, and you like put it over your bug bite, and you like suck the sting out of it, and it works really well.
I'm gonna write that down and do that after we get up. Because I have the
need it.
worst luck with mosquitoes. I get bit everywhere. It's awful.
Yeah.
I've seen those before, and I always wondered, like, do they actually work?
That's terrifying to me. I don't know what about it's scary, but like just the idea of it.
Yeah. It's like it just creates this like suction.
It's like suction.
That's
Yeah.
so
And
weird.
it just pulls it out. It is really weird, but it works.
I was thinking, oh, sorry, go ahead, Stephen.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was going to say, just when we do our intros, I wrote down, maybe I'll ask you all to share like what your functional area is, because sometimes like titles are different everywhere. And so maybe when you introduce yourself, share like what you actually do in terms of events or students, or I don't think you need to share like territory, but.
Love that.
Absolutely. And Becca, for the like reminder stuff at the beginning, if you want to do it, totally fine. If you want me to do it, I can. But I can put the links in the chat too.
Remind me what the reminder stuff is.
That fill out the evaluations.
Oh,
if you're looking for Act 48 credit, and I guess just attend the closing session at 3.
oh, if you wouldn't mind doing it, that'd be awesome.
That's fine.
I missed that.
At any point do we want to like offer up discussion or like give people a chance to like either put things in the chat or say things out loud, or do we just want to kind of go through it and then go to the end? A couple of my sessions have been different, so I don't know whatever you guys would prefer for like participation, I guess.
I think if you think of a great question and want to have them respond, I think that's great. Like I just thought off the top of my head, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how are your relationships with campus partners? 10 being the best, 1 being the worst, and then like put it in the chat just so like I think it creates a level of engagement, whether it's chat or like responding.
I think that's really good. That's a really good question.
So yeah, if anybody else, and like I only just thought of that, but if anybody else thinks of like,
I think in the sessions I've been in, people seem like to not want to unmute themselves like during the presentation, but the chat feature is like probably has been kind of active. So I might try and think of a question and ask it there.
yeah, almost like a temperature check. I'm thinking like, are you really listening?
Yeah, I like that.
And on the flip side, I found that sometimes when people unmute themselves to share, they sometimes turn into oversharers. I think I'm responsible for that too. But sometimes it gets a little like, thank you for telling me all about you and your institution. Let's move on to somebody else, you know?
Yeah, we can encourage it through the chat if we want to keep the conversation going there. And then, I mean, open it up at the end, maybe. Like we said with like, you know, how everybody thinks their best thing was and their worst
Yeah,
thing was.
yeah, I forgot about that question.
I'm probably just gonna ask like kind of towards the end of mine, like what virtual platforms have you find to be like most successful whenever you're connecting with people, and that's probably just gonna be my question.
That is like the most irritating dinging noise. Whoever decided that at Zoom that was a good noise.
The actual doorbell, yeah.
Yeah, that's bad.
Well, there are 10 people, so
Great.
I can go ahead and just admit everyone at 2, and then there's a link I have to get back to the main session. Is that, I heard you all talking about one of you can share it, or would you prefer that I put in the chat, or are you all good?
Yeah, I can share. I have like a whole template. That's been my job throughout the conference, is to share all the links. So
Okay.
All you.
Yeah. I said that earlier. I was like, listen, I had one job this entire time, and I think I've been very successful at it.
I thought yesterday's social mishap was so funny. It cracked me up when we all
I
got.
did too. Taylor
When we
was
got sent back to
so paranoid about it. I was like, girl, you handled that like a champ.
She was so honest. She was like, I clicked a button and we're all here now.
I know. It was so funny.
Were you all in bingo or the other one? I was in the yoga class.
I just did the happy hour one.
How was the yoga class?
It was good. It was really good. Seems like a really cool organization too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not flexible or coordinated at all, so yoga's not really my thing, but you know. I see why people do it. It looks like it's fun for normal people. My coworkers can tell you my desk has been in the same place for 4 years and I still run into it. So I'm just giving it a fun trying to be coordinated.
Oh no.
19 people.
It's still going up.
Yeah.
Oh.
Every time the ding happens, I get more nervous.
So it's 2 o'clock. Do you want me to admit everyone?
Mm-hmm.
Or can you
Go for it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I admit everyone, and then I'll turn off my camera and turn off my the sound, but I'll still be here. You can message me if you need anything. Yeah.
Great.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Good to see some faces. Hey, Barb.
Good afternoon. Nice
How
to
are you?
see you. Good.
Me too. Good, good.
Good.
Awesome. We'll give it just a minute or so just to let people still join.
All right, what do you think? Should we give it another minute or should we go ahead and get started?
And say we'll go ahead and get started. I'll do the quick reminders and housekeeping things just real quick. I will drop some links in the chat in case you're not already tired of me dropping a million links in the chat all conference. But just a couple things. So the first is going to be the evaluation for the main conference. So at the end of today, if you guys could just do a quick reminder to fill that out. There's also the link for the educational session reminders. If you guys are interested in the Act 48 credit, there's that link to fill out that form as well. And then also the one for the closing session coming up at 3 o'clock. So those are all in the chat for your reference, but I'll go ahead and turn it over to Becca to get us started.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. My name is Becca Haupt, and I'm a Senior Assistant Director at Bucknell University. I'm excited to spend some time with you all today. I think as a group, the 4 of us presenting, our presentation has certainly evolved over the past few months as circumstances have changed. We all have a hand in on-campus events that happen. And so we have really been putting our heads together as far as navigating this new online space, and with a definite interest on strengthening relationships across campus and leveraging and collaborating with our campus partners. So that's what we're hoping to bring to you today. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and have my colleagues introduce themselves so that you know who's in the room, and then we'll get started from there. Stephen, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I can. So my name is Stephen Zyra. I am an assistant director at the University of Pittsburgh Office of Admissions and Financial Aid. I've been in the office for a little over 5 years, and my role is I do a lot with our on-campus programs, as do us all, but really played a role in connecting our different campus partners with what our new virtual opportunities were going to look like. And I did some stuff with our counselors, high school counselors as well, and connecting them with our different resources.
Awesome. Sean, you want to go next?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, guys. I'm Sean Loyak. I'm the Associate Director of Admissions at King's College. I've been involved in almost every single event we've run at one point or another, but I currently run our conditional scholarship events, as well as our miniature open houses called Casey Fridays during the summer. I was a heavy hitter in the implementation and a lot of the virtual things that we decided to do, whether that be staff protocol during our virtual time frame, as well as our admission ambassadors, our student workforce. I work with them with my co-coordinator. So we've been converting them to a completely online experience as well. So we've been all over the board, as I'm sure most of us have been.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. I'm Brittany Grayson, Associate Director of Admission at Ursinus College, and I oversee all of our events and visits on campus. So everything from the day-to-day visits to our larger scale events. I also am our Counselor Relations Coordinator, so I oversee all of our high school guidance counselors, CBO, and transfer communication in terms of trying to communicate on the high school side of things. And then in probably about 2 hours, I would say, I'm going to be the conference planning chair for next conference. So event planning is definitely at the root of my core and something that I absolutely love.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. So over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to cover really how to establish those relationships from the ground up. Stephen's going to talk about maintaining those relationships with campus partners and stakeholders, and we're going to cover some of the kind of communication tips and tricks that have worked for us to maintain those relationships. Sean's going to help us out as our student supervision expert in residence and really cover how she's transitioned to supervising staff remotely and some of the opportunities and challenges that come from that. And then lastly, Brittany's going to talk about how she's worked to diversify the events on her campus, making sure that they are intentional to meet the needs of various audiences and students depending on where they are in their search process. And so I'll start by talking about, why getting buy-in matters. And I think I'll jump right to this last bullet point. It's a lot easier to work with people who want to work with you. And I know here at Bucknell, we're a relatively small campus. I have great relationships, personal and professional relationships with colleagues across campus. And that feeling of I don't want to bother them, or I don't want to have to ask them to do something for me or for us or for our event can be pretty taxing, because we don't want to feel like we're constantly asking someone for help, right? Or hey, can you help us with this? So within the past 2 years or so, I've really worked to shift that mindset a little bit and to figure out how we can get everybody on board to be working towards these shared goals. And when you think of enrollment as truly being a shared institutional goal, which we know it is, then you're truly not bothering anybody by asking them to assist with your programs when they understand how important your events, whether those are open houses or your KC Fridays or your admitted students events, how important they are at converting prospective students into applicants, into enrolled or admitted or enrolled students. So I think a big piece for me to get started really involved that education with people across campus, whether they were an associate dean or whether they were a faculty chair or whether they were just a faculty member who loves to help out and assist us. We found that there were some information gaps, and so we needed to really close those gaps in order to make sure that we were getting the buy-in that we needed. Another big piece that I've noticed is that, in admissions, as an admissions counselor, we are truly generalists. We know little information about a whole lot of topics, whether that's going to a college fair and having to know a little bit about every major that you offer, or every, your athletic programs or things like that. Whereas our faculty and our staff across campus, student affairs, things like that, they are truly specialists. They're experts in their area. And when we think about our students as they come through the funnel, sometimes they need a generalist. Maybe they're a sophomore just getting started. And sometimes they truly need to speak with a specialist. They are a senior who's been admitted, who's making their final decision. And so by getting buy-in from our campus, I've learned that it allows me to put the specialist in front of the student who needs to hear from the specialist and is no longer interested in hearing from me, the generalist. So those are some reasons that I've found that getting the buy-in up front has been really important for the success of our on-campus events and kind of cross-collaboration across campus. So I've been in this position at Bucknell for 2 years, and I've taken really strategic and intentional steps to develop those relationships. I'm not going to identify myself as an expert, and I don't think anything I did was perfect, but I think I've seen the relationships develop over the past 2 years in ways that suggest to me that it's working. And they're relationships and new collaborations that we're really excited about. So I want to share with you a couple of things that I did to really help us get there. And so the first was upon starting my position, right? Whether you're in your position for 3 months or whether you've been in your position for 3 years, it's never a bad idea to reintroduce yourself to make sure that people know, people on campus who you'll be working with, know who you are, what your role is, what to expect from you, and then what you will be expecting of them. We had to get really specific with what our needs were. In the past, I think we sometimes piecemealed some communication, right? Hey, there's an open house coming up next month, as opposed to laying out the entire calendar for the year for our faculty, staff, and partners, so they knew what to expect from us for the entire year. And then we really tightened up our communication. So I'm gonna share on the next slide some specific ways in which we did that, but it allowed us to really make sure that the faculty, the staff, and our partners across campus had everything they needed to be successful and to be really contributing players at our large scale events right from day one. One thing that Bucknell has, we use Workday for, I don't know, it's like HR kind of stuff. It's like where we have like payroll information, but there's a feature in Workday and it's actually an org chart, and you can see different people's org charts and where they fall. And I truly think it was a full calendar year before I realized that the Associate Dean of Faculty in each of our 3 colleges oversees and meets regularly with the faculty members who are the chairs of each department. And ultimately, if I needed buy-in from faculty, I needed to get the buy-in from the Associate Dean of Faculty because they were going to tell the faculty members what they needed to do. And I think it really took a full calendar year for me to understand that org chart, understand where their information was coming from, so I could get the information in front of the person who needed it, rather than me going directly to faculty myself or wondering, why they weren't participating at the level in which I wanted them to. So really understanding your org chart, understanding who your key players are, whether those are colleagues in student affairs or whether you have a liaison system and someone in particular in a department that you should be working with, getting specific about who I needed to be in contact with, who the key players were, proved to be really beneficial. And so those are some of the things that I did that I say I did them from my desk, right? They didn't take a whole lot of extra energy from me. I did them while I was sitting at my desk every day. But then there were other things I did much more maybe proactively or actively to really continue to build those connections across campus. And so one of those things was that I've joined a whole lot of different committees. I am maybe overtapped when it comes to committees, but I sit on our residential college program committee. I also sit on our Bucknell's Arts Council and some other interesting spaces that allow me to connect with faculty, either formally or informally, but allow me to advocate for admissions, to explain the role of admissions, to explain the mission of enrollment management or the events or what we're doing, and really develop those relationships and get buy-in. I truly attend as many of those things as I can. That way I can continue to build those connections across campus. During any live event or more recently in Zoom events, if we had, say, faculty or student affairs that were sharing something via Zoom, I would be sure to log on with them at the start of their session to again reintroduce myself, to thank them for their time, to thank them for participating. And in those spaces and in those meetings or in those brief introductions, I'd also be able to hear from them what their concerns were, what their questions were. And that's what showed me a lot of our gaps in information. So for instance, leading up to our spring open house that serves mostly sophomores and juniors, I had faculty tell me at the event that they had no idea who the audience was. They didn't know who they were talking to. They had no idea what class year was there, where they were from. They knew nothing. So we really needed to clean up how specific we got with faculty about who was going to be at the event and what the needs were from that student population. I think it's easy for us to take for granted, we tend to understand what a student needs at a certain point in their admissions process or in their college exploration process, but our faculty don't necessarily have the same information innate to them. So it really took us communicating it seemed really explicitly what students were at the event, what they needed. We even went as far as to giving faculty and staff tips for conversation starters with students. Because if you've ever seen at an event, a student walks up to the table and a faculty or staff member says, "What questions do you have?" Right? And then the students scared, they're standing behind their parents and they don't even know what they don't know. So they don't even know what questions they have. So we gave faculty and staff some tips for better initiating those conversations and making more meaningful conversations with our students. And as a result, our faculty were thrilled. They felt more comfortable behind the table because they knew what they were supposed to be doing. And on the flip side, the students felt more engaged, more supported, were able to have more natural conversations. So really attending events on campus, getting in front of or being able to speak with in person, different campus partners or on Zoom are all great options to begin to kind of build and maintain those relationships. In those meetings or in those spaces, I also typically would recommend bringing a handout or an agenda. That way you're able to give them a takeaway for when they forget what the dates are for the upcoming events or when they forget some level of information. I'll real quick cover the communication plan that I talked about and one big shift that we made over the past year. So if you're someone who oversees campus events and you need to elicit people from campus to do something for you on a particular day at a particular time. In the past at Bucknell, we had sent out a Google form, an RSVP form, just like you'd sign up for this conference and ask faculty and staff to sign up if they would be participating. What that told us was who would be participating, but it didn't tell us who had not yet responded. And so in order to kind of reconcile that, we then had these associate deans of faculty asking, did biomedical engineering sign up yet? Did chemical engineering sign up yet? And they didn't know. And they had no way to check whether or not the people on their teams did what they needed to do. So we kind of reverse engineered it. And instead we have this giant spreadsheet that went out to faculty and staff at the beginning of the fall semester, probably August last year. It had the dates for every single open house. And you'll see across the bottom, it had a tab for each of our 3 colleges, for our financial aid office, and for campus partners. And so right now we're looking at the tab for our College of Engineering. This is one of our open houses, but on this spreadsheet, they were able to see our our 3 fall open houses and our spring events, exactly what the session was, what the title of the session was, the description, the time, the location, everything they needed. One step further, we would also link anything they needed as far as resources, we would link it directly to this document. So up at the top where it says Fall Open House 2, once we had a finalized schedule for Fall Open House 2, we would link it right there. Once we had a map for the academic fair, we would link it right there. So if I was a faculty member and they would just then provide their name and their email so we knew who was participating, we were able to not only see, and if I was the Dean of the College of Engineering, I can not only see that maybe I'm the Dean and I'm signed up to do the engineering overview, but oh wow, no one from civil or environmental engineering has signed up yet. That's a problem. Let me go back to my team and make sure we get representation at these events. So it allowed our colleges and our campus partners to take more ownership. It allowed them to lay out and to see their entire year and what they were being asked to do. And I think it ultimately improved our communication across the board. So there was a lot less back and forth and a lot more ability for the departments to know exactly what was being asked of them. So that's something that worked really well for us. And by all means, we'll chat more. And I'm sorry I waited until this point to mention this, but you're welcome to put questions in the chat. And any of us would be happy to connect kind of after this session to talk through some more options or some more ideas. But I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Stephen now to talk about, once you've established those relationships, the work that Stephen's doing to maintain those relationships on campus.
Yeah, thank you. And it's probably just as important as establishing it is making sure that you continue that relationship, and it's a healthy relationship that will work for you and also your campus partners. So the first thing that is important to recognize, and especially now, is that your relationship with your campus partners is going to look very, very different. The meetings that you have with them, the expectations that you have of them are definitely very different, and just how you're planning your different events. So I think it's very important to continue to revisit those expectations, especially. So if at first, you were expecting them to do, 1 or 2 sessions during the week and then attend all, of the virtual visits or on-campus visits you may have, that may not work, especially for them. And maybe you can come up with a better strategy to make sure that you can, again, have that healthy relationship that they can also grow into as well. And the other part of that, things looking very different, is that every office handled the transition from on-campus events to virtual events very differently. And so just asking them how they are doing with that transition and how can you help. As admissions representatives, we are kind of on the front lines, probably more so than a lot of our departments and academic schools and colleges that are meeting with students. And so we may be getting questions and have figured out answers to questions that they are just getting maybe a week later, and they're working on in their own office. So just asking them if there is anything that we can do to help them. One thing that we have done at the University of Pittsburgh that has really helped, I think, is, if we do have kind of a planning meeting where we have our different campus partners joining a Zoom meeting, just allowing them 10, 15 minutes to talk amongst themselves and kind of brainstorm among themselves, what has been working for this school, maybe a different school could try out. And we actually just did that a couple of days ago, and the schools really enjoyed it, and there was great conversation there. And so bringing those relationships together can also really benefit. There's also a lot of excitement around the new ideas, and so it's important to allow new ideas to come in. It's important to kind of talk through them and see what is going to work, and not shoot them down, right? You want your campus partners to kind of own their half of that relationship as well. But you also want to make sure that, because there are going to be so many different ideas and so many different ways to connect with students now, especially that we are doing it primarily virtually, that's important that you kind of let them know that this is the direction that we plan on moving, and so that everybody is kind of on the same page. And then finally, with that maintaining, is just to communicate. We all know kind of in higher education, information is getting different places at very different times. So sometimes it's important just to kind of stay grounded and let people know what you know, what the next steps may be. Things are changing very, very quickly. And so it can really help keep frustrations low and communication consistent if you're able to just kind of update your campus partners. And then again, share ideas, share what works, share what doesn't work, and be sure to kind of always be listening and be a listening ear for the partners whenever they are coming to you with different issues that maybe they are having. And then putting the pieces together is another big piece of, or another big part of kind of maintaining that relationship, because there are so many different things changing right now. So this primarily focuses on how to best connect the resources that you have with your office, how to connect them best to your campus partners, and then help your campus partners best connect them with the students and families that are looking to connect with us on these virtual events. The one thing to know is who and what is your new audience, and how are the students and how are the parents now consuming information that we kind of took for granted, right? They are no longer wide-eyed students on campus with a drawstring backpack looking at the library and looking at different classrooms, right? We kind of have to bring them information in a very different way. And so the kind of moving to the what do they want to see, the one thing that we did in our office was just survey some of the juniors that have visited us, that we're hoping visit us again as now high school seniors, to see what kind of questions they had, to see what kind of presentations they wanted to visit, even just to see what's the best time, what's the length of time they want to connect with us virtually. And then we were able to relay that to our campus partners so that we all kind of understood, hey, this is our target audience, this is some of our target times, and this is going to be the length of time that you will be able to hold their attention. And so you want to make sure that you're kind of compacting everything that you would have done over a full day into maybe just an hour or so presentation for the different schools. Now is the chance to try new things. We don't want to discourage new things, and we are really excited. And an hour off, we've seen a lot of buy-in from people who are very excited about the opportunity to go virtual, right? Maybe it's because that we are not asking them to be on campus on a Saturday morning for an open house, but we'll ignore that and really hope that they are just very interested in engaging with our students. We've found that it's been very easy to engage with students who are out of state, in sessions where maybe we would have on campus 10 students from the surrounding Pittsburgh area on a Wednesday afternoon. We're seeing students from Kentucky and from Arizona and from Montana. And so, we're kind of thinking about that, right? How can we engage people kind of in a more broad area? And then finally, platforms, which is probably the biggest piece of the puzzle. So right now we're delivering information. Right now we're on Zoom, and I'd be interested to see if you guys want to put in chat any of the platforms that you have used and maybe some that you have found to be successful over the last couple of months. But I think whenever we transitioned to virtual events, we were very eager to get information out on all different kinds of platforms. And maybe it was a little bit confusing for students and families, and some of our on-campus partners as well didn't know quite what how we intended to connect with them and connect with our prospective students. So make sure that you're kind of just sticking to one or two platforms and that they are very accessible to parents and to students, and that you're utilizing all of your resources. And so I'm going to turn it over to Sean to talk about one of our most important resources.
Yeah. Also, we have a couple questions in the chat for you, I think, before you turn it over, if you want to check those out.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So that's a good question. Does your department use different platforms? Do we encourage using one platform for consistency? So we were using a couple of different platforms at the beginning, but we've really tried to move only towards Zoom meetings, and then we'll do some YouTube live sessions as well, as we get a lot of kind of generic viewers for that. And then, yeah, and I see Cisco WebEx, I've seen that one. GoToMeetings is another one that I've seen some other colleges and universities use. So there are, there's a ton of them, but I think kind of just finding and perfecting one is definitely, one or two is definitely helpful, especially in the beginning, when you're just hoping that people are connecting with you, and then you can kind of branch out and let some of your schools and departments do kind of their own thing too. I know we have a school now that hosts an Instagram live session. They have it kind of scheduled. I think it's like every Thursday afternoon. And they get a lot of viewership there, kind of just quick students dropping in and asking questions. But if that was early on, it would have been hard to market without the help of the official Zoom meetings and things like that, I believe. So.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. Thanks for the questions. We love getting questions from you guys, so feel free to shout them out at any point. Another big part of the partnership puzzle for admissions is definitely utilizing our student workforce. We all know, especially for all of us who are in admissions on this panel and in our group here, that facts tell and stories sell, and the students are a big part of how we share those stories with the families. And with us moving to virtual, there was a big gap if we didn't start to utilize the student workforce, especially at the time of the year when we all moved to COVID, working from home. Our student workers are a huge piece of the puzzle with our students who are enrolling and really feeling that they're connecting with students on campus and engaging with the community in a really meaningful way. So how do you turn that? We did a lot of different things. So the cool thing about all of our institutions is we all handled this process a little bit differently. So you're going to see a lot of different types of suggestions throughout this section. And at the end, we'll have a nice little graphic for you of how each school decided to handle it. So you can see where the suggestion came from, because obviously all of our institutions are a little bit different size-wise and need-wise. So, there may be one that fits best for you based on kind of what you know about us on the panel today. But There are certain things we pretty much all use students for at one point or another. Virtual large scale events was a big part of that, obviously including our open houses for our potential sophomores and juniors, our accepted students days or admitted students days. We also did virtual meetings with individual families with our student workforce. That included some one-on-one meetings, some info sessions that had a counselor present but are primarily student run, and then others that were just student-led info Zoom sessions where the students got to work independently. Students worked on phone calls with us, that worked on retention for deposited students, also worked on starting to build those relationships with the prospective students since they weren't having that opportunity to start that process with the juniors who were just finishing their year and getting ready to start that senior year transition. Social media has been a huge thing, I think, for the majority of us, including Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and the student workforce is a big part of that, and on all the different platforms. The student workers also at King's, we created this thing actually prior to COVID, but it came in very in handy during COVID. We had a student worker info page. So all of our students had a little miniature bio with their major, the activities that they were involved in, everything that a family would need to know. So if they wanted to reach out, one, to a former tour guide, if they had been to campus before, their King's email is on the website so that they can reach out at any time. Also, if a student wanted to connect with someone in their major that perhaps they hadn't connected with before, they had the opportunity to do that, and in a very easy platform to do that. And, we trained our student workers on how to get through that process as well. All right, so obviously we had to select our student workforce during COVID, and this is an interesting where everybody kind of did their own thing. Essentially, we had some of our schools decided to survey their staff and see who was interested in working remotely, and that did translate to, in some cases, the majority of the workforce being available, which was really cool. King's decided to handpick a small group of students that best fit the virtual communication. We are a smaller school, so we thought that was the best fit for us. Within that handpicking, we decided during the spring, we only wanted juniors and seniors because with our students getting very close to enrolling, the questions get a lot more complex, and we felt the sophomores were not prepared to answer those more complex questions. But we did decide to utilize the sophomore workforce once we got to our summer. So now with our Casey Friday virtuals coming up, all of our student workforce, except for the freshmen who have not yet been trained, will be being utilized essentially for that part of the process. And then we also had I believe it was Pitt, used the full student workforce throughout the entire quarantine. So they had a huge student workforce at their disposal, which again, I'm sure fit their needs very well, but that was another option that we decided to do. There we go. Obviously, like anything during COVID, there were challenges that we faced with our student workforce, as challenges we faced with everything as moving forward. But for the first thing we did, kind of ran into was approval from upper management to continue student worker programs. So I know at King's we had to advocate for why our student workforce was so important. This was obviously generally understood, but it was something we had to talk to several different higher ups about and get the approval. The approval happened really quickly, but it was a hurdle we had to get through in the very beginning. Technology limits of student workers. So obviously for those of us who are on the admission side, we come prepared with our admissions issued laptops, sometimes our admissions issued cell phones, everything like that. So we have our full technology right in front of us, but our student workforce doesn't necessarily have that. We ran into some issues with students just using older laptops that were having trouble integrating to the new technology. We had some issues with students and their internet connectivity, which I think a lot of people had more than anticipated issues with that, especially with everybody being on home and being online at once. I think some of the servers were kind of overloaded from an internet bandwidth standpoint. So that was an interesting thing. Some of our great student workers who really wanted to be there had trouble being there because they could not get a stable internet connection. So that was always fun. The location of a student worker was also an interesting situation. So obviously all of our students who lived on campus went home to their moms and their dads and their brothers and their barking dogs and their cats who are climbing on their computers and all of that stuff. So we had to make sure we talked to them about finding a professional space to work, as we all had to do, which has been, I'm sure, an adventure for most of us, and make sure that they could find a quiet and professional way to communicate with families, which in a student that has 4 younger siblings might have been a little bit trickier than the student who was the only child coming home to, a quiet house. But implementation of new technology with the student workers has been in transition as well. A lot of us did, student essentially training sessions with our ambassadors that helped get everybody on the same page. Because even if our students were using Zoom, for example, because most people have, we still wanted them to know how we wanted them to utilize it. So there was a lot of training involved with that. Obviously, how many hours should student workers be working? That was a big question. Also, if a student is essentially on call, but not meeting with the family at that time, do we pay them the same or do we pay them less? That was another interesting kind of hurdle, which is different than what we experienced during the year, because during the year when they're not meeting with families, they're filing things, they're working on the mail, they're getting all different kinds of things going on. But when it's virtual, it's just they're kind of there, right? So wanted to make sure we were utilizing them effectively. Keeping track of responsibilities and hours. This was a struggle primarily for the schools who had larger workforces, because when you have 70 students, it's a lot harder to keep track of them than King's had like 10 to 15. That was a little bit easier. And also for the schools who had larger workforces, making sure that everyone had enough work to go around was a big challenge, because the work they were doing kind of got narrowed and more focused. So it was interesting to make sure everybody had something to do. All right, and so obviously King's, Bucknell, Ursinus, and Pittsburgh are all totally different schools. So what we have here is all the different things we decided to do and what, school they fit best. I think each institution took it their way that worked the best for us and our size institution and our needs at the time and what our students were doing. And I think everyone had a very successful transition to online. So that's always a plus. I'm gonna check the chat here and make sure. Students calls. Oh, what platform did the students use for calls? At King's, I believe we had them use that Google that generates the phone number. I'm not sure about anybody else have any different ones for the student worker phone calls out there or something similar. We didn't want them giving out their personal cell phone numbers. We felt that was a little not the best idea. So that definitely worked out really well. Let's see. Very cool. Yeah, we just felt it would be a liability with the phone number, so that makes sense, which is good. I think we all have a lot of student workers. King's, I know overall we have about 45 student workers. We're one of the smaller workforces on the team, so the presentation team. So we've got a lot of students. But if there's no more questions, I'm going to turn it over to Brittany.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean. Thanks, guys. So just a quick couple of things. I know one thing we've worked really hard in our in-person events was really being able to diversify what we were offering families throughout the cycle. So when I first came into this role, it was a lot of the same events repeated over and over, and the content was very similar, to which then we moved to this online format, and how many different Zoom meetings can you have, right? And make them all different and assure that each time they're meeting with you, it's a different type of interaction. So one thing that we worked really hard to do when we first had moved to online, it was to really look at what the students needed at that point in the process. We had to cancel our spring open house, our admitted student events, so kind of both ends of that cycle. So we surveyed the students, and we also surveyed the counselors. It was more difficult for us to reach students once we moved online and really figure out what it is that they wanted. So we also tapped into the high school side to see kind of if that could help guide us a little bit more in terms of what we were offering. We then looked at what we had the capabilities of doing. So at the start of this, we did not have a partnership with Zoom. We had GoToMeeting, which looks like it's from like 1984. So for students, they were like, ew, what is this? This doesn't look modern and fun and fun to engage with. So we made a huge push for Zoom. And then we were also utilizing Slate and the features that Slate has. So that is our CRM at Ursinus. So we were able to host a lot of things actually in Slate. So all of our weekly visits, which is another thing we struggled a lot with at Ursinus, is that we're very individualized, being such a small institution. All of our meetings are really one-on-one. So it was hard to go from, the one-on-one to hosting larger Zoom things. So we were able to use Slate to really kind of hone in on that and be able to still produce that face-to-face contact with people, so that the students felt like they were still being able to talk to their specific admission counselor. And like I said, really making the most of this virtual world and what makes the most sense. I know my own daughter has been pretty good about keeping on a schedule, but we did, kick back, I guess, her wake up time. So she was able to sleep in a little bit more. And I'm sure that's only more so the case with high school students that maybe are doing the asynchronized programs, to where they don't have to be up at a certain time. So we really found that our morning offerings weren't being well attended. So really kind of shifting and what does that look like moving forward and being able to offer things later on in the day. I know for our admitted students today, Becca, you can probably advance the slide. But for our admitted students, instead of having a day, we did an experience for them because we knew that maybe they had to go to class or maybe they weren't able to, you know, skip their virtual meetings in their own school and high school. So we were able to kind of switch it a little bit. So to wrap that up, like I said, the class of 2024, what we had done was instead of like the full day, like I said, it was a 3-day experience. A lot of it was at their own pace. So they were able to kind of do what made sense to them at that time and gather the information that made sense to them at that point in the process. So some of them had been to campus, so maybe the tour wasn't as important, or maybe some of them really needed to speak to Res Life, or maybe some of them really wanted to hear more about clubs and activities that we offered on campus. So being able to try to bring to life everything they would have gotten in person and be able to provide some form of content for them virtually. We tapped into pretty much everybody on our campus and made a lot of calls and personal outreach to say, hey, do you think you can make a really short video about your department and just explain a little bit so that they can see you as a real person, whether it's virtual or not in person anymore, but virtual, just to be able to put that face to the department or to really see the warmth from that person. I know our Dean of Students is one of our biggest selling points at our school, and we love to put her in front of people because she's warm and bubbly and has this great personality, and that may not come across so much virtually. So we were like, please film videos, please do this, please do that, so that we can have you in front of our students to really feel like they're going to be taken care of when they step on our campus, and really what does that look like virtually. The next step, and that's something that I've been focusing on in the last week or so, is starting those juniors and what does that look like for them. And they're about to start this college process, and a lot of them probably haven't even been on a college campus before. And how are we expected to have them narrow down and figure out what they're really looking for in this process if they've never been able to be there or to really think about what they're looking for? So starting to really look at what we can offer virtually for them is something we've done a lot with. We did host what we would refer to as like a larger summer open house. We had about 390 people register and had about a 70% show rate. And we did that 2 Saturdays ago. It was the 13th. Was when we had done it, and the array of people we had from different areas, I know somebody had touched on that a little bit earlier, we had people from all over, where normally for our on-campus events, we draw a fairly local, probably about a 4 or 5 hour radius around us. We had people all over the West Coast, all over the South, Southeast, Southwest, being able to attend our events. We had like 8 students who signed up internationally, which for little older sinus is a lot for us. But it's something that I think is really creating a lot of leverage in this virtual world, where students are being able to visit campuses and do programming that, you know, might not just be in their backyard or that may have been hard to get to in person before. So the magic words, reopening campus, I will touch on that just a little bit. We are opening up July 1st, so we're going to start offering some on-campus visits and kind of trying to get that process started. And this kind of ties a little bit back into the junior search as well. So in August, we were approved to host very small on-campus events. So we're going to cap obviously at 25 as given guidelines by the governor, but we are going to host some on-campus things and do more workshops for juniors and kind of helping them through the process and really trying to provide not just ways to visit our sinus, but also ways to kind of further and push them through the process a little bit, and just provide opportunities for them to kind of get their feet wet in the college search process. We are, though, still offering all of our virtual events as well, because we know that not all families are going to be excited and ready to come back to campus just yet. So we wanted to be able to offer both. We're looking at hosting, again, I highly doubt we're going to be given the green light to do larger on-campus events in the fall. So I've reworked our entire fall calendar to small events, as well as doing a lot of virtual open houses and virtual options too. So we have also started the fall conversation a little bit, but I'll leave it at that. Becca, do you want to wrap it up and then leave a couple minutes for questions?
Yeah, I can do that. I know we're tight on time. We were hoping to have more time for conversation, but one thing I would just say is we're in this place where we're like consuming information. We're seeking out what are other schools doing. We're in all of these different listservs and we're attending sessions over the past 2 days. But at the end of the day, you're really going to need to make a decision about what works for you, your institution, the resources that you have on hand, the platform that makes the most sense for you. So while what another school is doing might look and sound great, it does look and sound great for them. It might not look and sound great at your institution. So really kind of working on funneling and processing all the information you've taken in over the past couple of days, weeks, months, and spitting out a picture of fall or summer programming that is going to work and align for you and your institution. Obviously keeping up with the communication and leaning on some of those partnerships when you can use them. So I know there had been a couple of questions throughout the chat, but if anyone else wants to add any questions or feel free to take our information to stay in touch, you should be able to see that all there. I'm sure that all of us would be happy to answer any questions or collaborate or brainstorm or be of any assistance in that way. But I also want to thank Brittany, Sean, and Stephen for presenting with us. And of course, the PACAC conference team for putting this together and pivoting so quickly to allow us to do this virtually. So thanks everybody for coming.
Thank you. I would agree, Britt.
Absolutely. I think we're just 1 foot into the new era at this stage.
I know. Kelly, I'll grab your question too if you're still on here. We've I think decided, it's hard to say, but I think we are doing like a fall experience instead of like fall travel or, you know, hosting a lot of our events. So we are going to do a lot of virtual options for students. We have a couple different larger open houses planned virtually, but I think we are leaning towards that virtual experience.
Oh, yay. Amber, let me know if you want me to send you like the actual template. If you think that would be helpful, I'd be happy to send that your way.
That would be amazing. Thank you. Yeah, trying to get them. I sent something out to them back in April about an event. And then in the meantime, another event, because everything happens so quickly, we know, right?
Yep.
And so I sent out something for them to do, I guess it was like early June. And then we put in an admitted students day right in the middle. So I wanted to reach out to them early about the June, get that on their radar. And then admitted students day virtual kind of was a new thing. It popped up. And then of course, you know, we had faculty that participated. And then I got the email from one of the assistant deans who's like, so that was really confusing. And I'm like, the whole spring was confusing.
Right. And I just try to make it as easy for them as possible to consume it in a way that they need it. And this worked this past year. So I'd be happy to share our kind of template.
Yep.
Becca, could you also share that with me? I've struggled, right? When I first got here, everything was sent via a form that either got emailed electronically. Sometimes I got it in interoffice mail. Biology actually did a Google Doc on their own. And so this year I copied that and shared it with people. But now I'm thinking, like you said, instead of having to check 17 different Google Docs, having one, I'm just going to force it on them. And the departments that are still working on paper are going to have to figure it out. They can print it and send it to me and I'll put it in if I have to. But I think that would be incredibly helpful. So I have a general template, but I want to see how I can hype it up.
Yeah, I'm just jotting down your contact.
Thank you.
Carolyn, can you drop your email in the chat?
There's nothing more powerful than having the assistance of a dean on something. I know that's my tactic. Our dean of the college, I meet with him before every event, get faculty buy-in. I'm like, hey, how do I get this faculty member to say yes to me when they just said no to me 5 minutes ago? So
we leave it up to our chairs. So they're the ones that I hassle, but the provost and her secretary get copied on almost anything, especially if it's the second and third time I've emailed them.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of going above them. But thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
Thanks
absolutely.
everyone for being here. So
Thank
Yeah,
you
thank you
so
everyone. This was a great
much.
session. Let us know if we can help.
My mouse, there it goes. Bye, everyone.
Bye, Amber.
I always wonder at this point when there's just a few people left, like, do you think they all walked away? Like they're all getting a snack.
Yeah.
We're just sitting up in someone's living room.
Probably. Cool. That was great. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you all.
We're all done. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye,
Thank you for
everybody.
being here to help.
No problem. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.